Joining us today, Idaho Senator Jim Risch. Senator Risch, thank you so much for joining us here this morning.
Glad to be here, Joe.
It is a wild time in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Things are. I've done this for a while, and there's as much upheaval as I've seen in a while. So a lot of things to get your arms around.
Well, I know about 2 weeks ago, all of us were glued to the TV. We were watching rockets being fired at Israel. Of course, October 7th, the anniversary just this past week of that terrible terrorist attack in southern Israel. From an American perspective, from the perspective of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, what does the situation look like in Israel right now, and how concerned should Americans be with it?
Well, first of all, you got to look at it from 30,000 feet, and that is that Israel is one of the best allies that we have had for a long, long time. They're reliable. They're good at what they do. They're good at defending themselves. They got a thousands of year history of doing it, and they know how to do this. The other thing is most Americans don't realize is how much the Middle East has changed, particularly over the last 10 years and really over the last 5 years. The only bad actor left is Iran. That's all that's left. And you say, well, what about Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis? They're all part of Iran. They're terrorist organizations located in Yemen or Lebanon or in Gaza, but they are all part of Iran. The Arabs are out of this. They've had it. They're done with this. One of the turning points that history is going to look back at is when the Abraham Accords were signed. They were negotiated by President Trump during his time in office, and you actually had Arab countries that had signed an agreement to normalize with Israel. Of course, Jordan and Egypt had fought the war 40-plus years ago, and have had a cold peace with Israel over all these years that has really held. But the other Arab countries, not so much. They would team with Iran when they got into a fight with Israel. That's over. That's done. They're through with that. I deal with them regularly, and they've had it. They want different for their kids. They want different for the future of their country. And so the only one left is Iran. And one of the great underreported stories was the fact that when Iran tried to attack Israel and dropped 300 missiles and rockets on them, probably about a $500 million effort, which resulted in no injuries and no death to anybody in Israel. It was defended well and completely by Israel itself with its own planes and its own overhead defenses, also by the U.S. and by Great Britain and by France. Relatively non-newsworthy things, because that's what you'd expect to happen. But something else happened then that was underreported, and that is 2 Arab countries flew to protect Israel against Iran. Both Saudi Arabia and Jordan flew. Now, that's never happened before. I mean, it would be unheard of even 10 years ago for that to happen. So that kind of tells you how the Middle East has changed. So Israel right now is trying to protect itself. They've made the decision, as we did, in World War II. When we looked at the Nazis, we said, look, these people cannot exist as a military organization, a political organization, a cultural organization, and we're going to destroy them. We got together with Britain and our other allies, and we did that. The Israelis have made the same decision as far as Hamas is concerned. And that's what they're doing. And if you put it in that perspective, you can understand what they're doing. I'm critical of the White House. I'm tired of hearing them wring their hands and say, "Oh, we don't want escalation." Well, and they say, "Well, it's going to broaden into a regional war." Everybody that's in it's already in it. None of the Arab countries are going to get in this thing. They just aren't. So the ones that are in it are already in it, and so you don't need to worry about escalation. You need to end this thing, and the way it's going to be ended is for Israel to do what they have to do to end the existence, really, of Hamas.
And as you touched on, Iran had fought through proxies for years.
Right.
Now Iran's, doing it on their own, shooting those missiles over. Right. Do you see that as an escalation or maybe a move of desperation?
Yeah, probably some of both. Proxies, by the way, isn't a good word. I mean, these guys aren't proxies. They are actually, look, they were founded by Iran, they're funded by Iran, they're inspired by Iran, they're trained by Iran, they're ordered by Iran. So these aren't proxies. I mean, these are part of the Iranian establishment. Iran doing what they're doing, they have held off for a long time because they know what's going to happen if they get into it with the Israelis, and it ain't going to be pretty. So we'll see where this goes, because there's no doubt that Israel is going to respond, and it's going to be painful this time. Because they want to restore deterrence. Look, these people don't understand kindness. They don't understand sitting down and saying, what do we got to do to make things better? They're not interested in that. They have a religious fervor that believes that they should eliminate Israel. Israel knows it. It's existential to Israel, and they have to defend themselves in that regard. So what Iran understands is power, and that's what Israel's going to show them, I really believe.
In the conversation, too, you have the critics of the White House, like yourself, and the critics of Benjamin Netanyahu asking him, well, don't over-retaliate, don't escalate this any further. As you touched on, though, Hezbollah, Hamas, other terrorist organizations in the region, their goal is to kill all Jews on the planet, and they're very clear about this. So when you have these critics that are telling the White House to back off, but then you have Prime Minister Netanyahu saying enough is enough, how does that balance on the world stage?
Well, it doesn't balance on the world stage, but what you have is you have people trying to tell Israel how they should take care of themselves. Nobody knows better how to take care of themselves than Israel does. And I've told them they need to butt out of it and don't be telling them how to fight this war. And what I do is I put it in a perspective of what if during World War II, we and the Brits invaded France, started across France, got into Germany, got about halfway through Germany, and somebody said, oh, there's too many civilians dying. I think we're going to quit here and let Hitler and the Nazis be. We just said, what are you, crazy? And I'm sure that's how Israel looks at this. They have set out to accomplish what they're going to do.
On the world stage, too, in terms of things we're keeping an eye on, I know there was a new report out in the Washington Post this morning that China is trying to somehow influence elections. There was a report out that said they were using anti-Semitic tropes on social media to try to influence American elections. Of course, we talked about Russia in the same sphere over recent years. In terms of national security right now, it seems like there's a lot of moving parts for gentlemen like yourself to keep an eye on.
Well, yeah, on the influence in our elections, our enemies do take advantage of our First Amendment freedom of speech. And as a result of that, they go through either themselves disguising it or even using people here in the United States to put out things that, look, there's a lot of stuff you will see that's pretty sophisticated, but then you'll see other stuff that is blatantly talking points coming out of the Kremlin or coming out of Beijing. So again, most people sort through this, and the further we go with the as the internet gets more mature and time-wise, people are more concerned about the fact that what they see on the internet is not gospel. There was a time in this country that turned on TV in the evening, and Walter Cronkite came on, and by golly, if he told you the sun was going to come up in the west the next day, people would be looking west. They're not there anymore with all the stuff that's out there. Most people are pretty skeptical. But make no mistake about it, our enemies will try to influence our elections because they have a view of who would be better for them in the White House.
Is there a way to quantify, I guess, the temperature on China and Russia compared to what we've seen in recent years?
Yes. First of all, you don't want to put those two in the same bucket. They're both bad actors. Look, the world is more and more polarizing into two poles. One with us as democracies and capitalism on one side, and the other is with countries getting together that are socialist, even communist countries that are autocrats. In that bucket, you've got Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Syria, Cuba, Venezuela, countries like that. The challenge, my view is the challenge for this century is going to be that we've got to figure out how to occupy this planet without killing each other or getting into these wars. Because look, we're not going to change; they're not going to change, and so we've got to move forward where we're not going to kill each other. But look, Russia is imperialistic. It has been. It has always been. We all thought that when the Iron Curtain came down and the Soviet Union broke up, Russia would take its place on the international stage, behave itself. They're never going to be perfect. They poison people once in a while. They interfere in elections. Bad things, but nonetheless, who'd have guessed they were going to start a medieval war in the 21st century? So it's going to be a long time before they are trusted again by anyone. China, on the other hand, when you're dealing with China, what you want to do is hang on to your wallet, because with China, it's all about the money. It has been, will be. China and Russia are not natural allies. They don't have the same view of things. They're both socialists. They're both autocracies, but you have to think of them differently.
Okay, moving on to some of your work on the Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. I know that a lot of Idahoans focusing on Lava Ridge. And for those unfamiliar, the Lava Ridge Wind Project, proposed wind energy plant. It would have hundreds of wind turbines in the Magic Valley. We've heard from locals that are not a big fan of it. I know that you've also spoken out against some of, I guess, the federal action or the federal intentions of trying to create this. What are your thoughts on Lava Ridge, and what do you think Idahoans should know?
Well, first of all, to say that the people in Magic Valley are not too red hot about this is the biggest understatement I've heard in a while. Look, nobody down there wants this. It's 100,000 acres of open space that people love down there, and they're going to put these towers on them. They're as big as the Space Needle or higher, hundreds of them on this spot. Then they're going to generate electricity and send it to California. You know, if California wants the energy, so be it. But build the windmills, take their public lands and 100,000 acres of their public lands. People in Magic Valley really, really are opposed to this. And I've gotten thousands of comments on email, on phone, and everything else. There's very little support in Magic Valley. The only support we have even heard is from a few people that had a financial interest in going to build the project. Nobody else down there wants it, and so we're pushing back as hard as we can. You probably saw when I cross-examined the head of the Secretary of Interior on it. It's online. We had a spirited discussion about it, but this is wrong on so many levels.
I know one of the criticisms of the Secretary of the Interior when you were questioning her was there wasn't a lot of great answers. When you're in those like intense questioning sessions, what is that like going back and forth?
Well, I've done it all my life, so it's not an uncomfortable position for me. But look, she didn't have any answers because, look, this is a direction that came. There's no doubt that this direction came out of the White House. They've made, if you want to understand the administration, the Biden-Harris administration, it's about two things. It's about woke and it's about green. And everything they do is done in that vein. Somebody up there came up with a great idea that they wanted X number of kilowatt hours generated by wind and solar and what have you. So they picked this. They sent it down to the Department of Interior and said, build it here. I mean, I can't imagine somebody walking into a Department of Interior office, a BLM office, and saying, "Say, I'd like 100,000 acres to rent from you to put up wind towers." I mean, it's stunning. You've never heard of anything like that. It would draw a laugh under most circumstances. But here they've got a private contractor that they're trying to make a deal with to do this. It's wrong, just flat wrong.
And I know at the end of the day, too, this is public land. The public should have a say.
Well, and as you know, I asked her about that, and she said, well, the public does have a say. The problem is they're not going to listen to them, you know. And she said, well, we're listening. I said, no, you're not. And they clearly are not.
Speaking of natural resources and Idaho resources, the INL celebrating 75 years. Their work has been critical. What can you say about INL's 75th anniversary and the great work they do here in Idaho?
Yeah. Well, you know, the INL is one of the great gems of the gem state. We're so proud of the lab. That was the first place on the planet, in the universe, as far as we know, that generated electricity from nuclear power. And that was done in 1951. Since then, they've built 52 reactors over there, mostly demonstration projects. They're about to put 2 more online, one next year, and then they got some more coming behind that. And we're really in a renaissance for nuclear energy, not only in America, but in the world. In fact, I would say more so in the world even than in America. Countries are anxious to build nuclear plants. We compete with Russia, China, and France. Competing with France isn't that much of a problem. They're allies like we have. They have the same values that we have. Russia and China, not so much. And we need to do better than what we're doing. 87% of the recent plants that have been built around the world have been built by Russia and China. So when this happens, they develop a relationship with that country, a financial relationship with that country, a security relationship with that country. We need to be better players in that. And right now, INL and indeed the nuclear industry in America is ramping up to do that, which we really need to do.
I learned pretty recently that the INL and their work was, directly associated with the USS Idaho nuclear submarine that's going to be commissioned soon. As an Idaho representative, how cool is it to see on a national stage the USS Idaho, knowing that parts of it built right here in the Gem State?
Well, and our submarine program is ramping up also. We're turning out a couple of them a year, and we really need to do better than that. China has eclipsed us. They have more warships than we have. We've got a really a big operation going with AUKUS between Great Britain and Australia and the United States in building these nuclear subs. INL played a great role in that. The nuclear navy really was created down at the INL. That's a great place, and they're doing great things. Also, most Idahoans don't know that it is becoming, we are the flagship lab in America and in the world for nuclear energy, but it is quickly becoming the flagship for cybersecurity. We were able to steer a lot of that stuff to the lab because they have this great expertise down there on control systems, which is what you need obviously for nuclear. But in addition to that, they have test beds down there and a great workforce. So that operation is growing. If you have an attack, if you're a private company and you have some kind of cyber attack, the team to address it will come out of INL. Now it'll be drawn from people around the country, but the things run out of INL.
Other Idaho conversations, something that we've watched, I guess, change and ebb and flow over the years is these Title IX conversations with transgender athletes. I know that a few weeks ago we saw Riley Gaines on the State House steps here, Governor Little talking about defending women's sports. I saw that just this week you awarded Representative Barbara Ehart. What are your thoughts on this conversation, and I guess specifically the situation where Boise State's team decided they didn't want to play the game, concerns about a transgender athlete on the other team?
Well, this woke, far left woke view regarding males who feel they aren't or whatever, competing against females is just a bridge too far. Not just for Republicans. A lot of my Democrat friends says, look, this is no good. Look, Title IX's been around for half a century. Title IX was created to promote women's sports, give them some equity in women's sports. Everybody I know that's involved in sports says that this thing that they're trying to do, that the Biden administration is trying to do, opening up, letting trans compete in women's sports, is going to be very devastating for women's sports. It will be detrimental to Title IX. It's wrong. It's like I say, the vast majority of people say this. Look, let the women compete against women, the men compete against men. Like I understand the trans situations out there, but that should not be allowed to really badly hurt women's sports.
And I spoke with a member of the community that said, I understand why Boise State forfeited the game, but they shouldn't be penalized and they should have played the game. And one of the problems that we've noticed is a lot of people are just uncomfortable talking about it. And because of that, the NCAA, Mountain West Conference, no one's taking action. Do you think this is something Congress should take on?
Yeah, well, look, the reason a lot of those people don't like to talk about it is they get pummeled by the far left woke community. And look, there's a point where you got to stand up to them and say, no, this is a bridge too far. We're not going there, And most people will do that, but people that are in a political position or what have you, I've been disappointed in the NCAA. They should be taking a much stronger role in this. I think they're kind of waiting to see which way the wind is going to blow. The White House and the Biden-Harris administration's on one side of this. I think the vast majority of Americans are on the other side of this. I think it's going to play out to where we're going to win this thing. I mean, it's just, it's wrong. It's wrong on so many different levels, and it will really hurt women's sports.
And I know that there's a lot of questions, and I'm curious for your thoughts on the line between inclusion and accepting and then competition in sports and fairness. Where do you see that line?
Well, the line's drawn in all kinds of places. Good examples, age. You don't have the 12th grade kids playing against the 6th grade kids, and in baseball or basketball or football or anything else. You've got to draw a line somewhere. And for, gosh, millennia, thousands of years, the men competed against the men, the women competed against the women. So that's just the way it is. And I think that's what most Americans accept. It's just wrong to do otherwise, and we need to protect women's sports. We really do.
And I know the conversation, too, is also about protecting Idaho in the sense that there's already concerns that the NCAA, or maybe even like the White House, would penalize the state of Idaho for having certain laws and not hold events here.
Well, they try that all the time, but we're a sovereign state. We will push back on something like that. Look, the Boise State game, they had to rack up a loss for that, but apparently one other team had done that before it, and there's supposedly 3 more that are going to do that. So if this team stands up and says, well, we're the champion, yeah, you're the champion, because nobody would play because it's not a level playing field. That's not going to go very far.
Wildfire season. I spoke with Governor Brad Little at length this year about wildfire season, something that we talked about and something that came up with a little bit of frustration working with the federal government. From your view in D.C. and in Congress, what does it look like here in Idaho in terms of working with the federal government and managing fire season?
Well, we have a long history of working with the federal government on fires because 2/3 of Idaho is owned by the federal government. So you really wind up having to work with them. The cost of these things is stunning, and most of the fires are on federal property. So we've done that for a long time. You're always, when that's happening, and there's state land involved in that too. But when you have that, you're bound to have issues. Most of the time, we get those issues resolved. I think where the real rub comes is the management that should be taking place that will help diminish some of these fires. When I was governor, we wrote a roadless rule for Idaho, which is still in place. And in fact, we're really the only state that has a roadless rule. And one of the things that we did in the roadless rule was provide for areas around places we wanted to protect, namely smaller towns out in the forest and what have you, allowing the Forest Service to go in there and much more aggressively manage the land directly around them. So if you had a fire out there, you were able to stop the fire, and it's actually worked in a lot of places. And I give the federal government real kudos for signing on. When we did that roadless plan, we got the federal government to accept it, and we help manage the land. We have an advisory group that sits with the federal government on how, particularly the lands in the roadless areas, are managed. So, look, there's lots of moving parts there, and you have to work at it. It's like any other management project.
In related, talk about the National Old Growth Amendment. You've expressed some concerns that the proposed amendment to the forest management plans could slow down essential forest work. What are your thoughts on that? And in general, I guess, this Old Growth Amendment? I know maybe a lot of people aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, most people are not familiar with it. My colleagues in Congress aren't familiar with it. But what happened is the White House put out a directive for the Forest Service to enact regulation that would protect old growth stands. There is absolutely nothing wrong with protecting old growth stands. You should protect old growth stands under certain circumstances. But look, the old growth stands of timber exist on just a plethora of different ecosystems out there. And you can't do a one-size-fits-all. And they tried to put out a rule. There's 128 forest plans in America. They put out a rule saying a major forest plan to do A, B, C, and D. Well, you have to understand, with an old growth stand of timber, by the way, when I went to Congress, I was the only person that had my undergraduate degree was in forest management. I was the only person out of the 535 people that had any kind of either training or experience in forest matters. So I was stunned by we're supposed to be doing oversight, but nobody knows that much about it. But look, every forest stand, when you look at it, it's in a different stage of life. It may be a baby, it may be an adolescent, it may be an adult, or it may be old growth. Well, when you're looking at an old growth stand, they're beautiful, they're wonderful. They're ones that need really strong protection, like the sequoias and the redwoods and what have you. But in a standard old growth stand in other parts of the country, when you look at an old growth stand, you got to remember that stand is dying. It's in old age. So you can't just say we're going to stand and watch it die. You need to manage it like everything else. That was my objection, is they were trying to do, as frequently happens with the federal government, since it's so big, they're trying to do a one-size-fits-all. That was the objective there. I think we may have some success there.
Awesome. Well, Senator, you answered everything I had for you. Anything else you wanted to touch on, or anything else you think Idahoans should know, maybe about the University of Idaho football team? They're playing great up there.
Go Vandals.
Yeah.
Look, and Boise State's doing fabulous
yeah.
too. You know, I mean, they've been a powerhouse, and gosh, they're fun to watch. Going back to the Lava Ridge issue. The presidential campaign is going to, and result of that election is going to be determinative of a lot of things on Lava Ridge. If indeed Donald Trump wins the election, he will be sworn in January, and the president always walks from the front steps of the Capitol up to the president's room in the United States Senate, where he signs a number of executive orders. In fact, that's where Biden signed all of them that opened up the southern border. And they sign these executive orders that undo the executive orders that their former president did. One of those that was done, you remember the Keystone Pipeline.
Yeah.
When Biden took office, he walked in there, signed an executive order, and that was the end of the Keystone Pipeline. When Donald Trump walks into that president's room, waiting for him is going to be a Keystone Pipeline-like executive order that says, Lava Ridge ain't no more. And he will sign that, and that'll be the end of the project. If, on the other hand, the election goes the other way, there's going to be lawsuits going down the pike for a long, long time. But if Donald Trump gets elected, the Lava Ridge project is over.